Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel Tomcat Stitchery. I'm Whitney and today I am here with part one of the Style Arc Ponte Pants. This sew along's only been in my head since November, I think, and I've been talking about it, so I really apologize that I'm just now getting to it, but we're gonna make a great pair of Ponte Pants, folks. I think this is going to be a 3-week class, 3 Sundays, so stay tuned. It's a pretty quick make, but I'm going to just break it up so it's easy to follow along. Okay, let's do a little housekeeping. This is the first video you guys are seeing in my sewing setup of my new filming studio. I can hear that it is still echoey. It's even echoey with me in here just talking. Like I can hear it without even listening back to it. So rest assured, if you can just bear with me a little bit, I am figuring that out, a combination of maybe some acoustic tiles, and I'm also going to hang a quilt on the wall, as well as maybe some other pieces in the room just to help deaden that sound a little bit. So if you can just bear with me for a couple of weeks while I figure that out, I will get the echoing figured out. So thank you for your patience. But I wanted to go ahead and get all this filmed. Okay, so today, let's go over where we're gonna go. We're gonna go over our supplies, our fabric. I'm gonna talk about a little bit more about the pattern, as well as we will cut out our pattern. We'll kind of go over those pieces. And I'm just gonna show you guys some basic fitting things that you might need to know for the if you're making your own pants, like maybe some stuff that you have issues with. One of the pluses of this pattern is that it is for stretches, and so that does solve a lot of issues with fit. So hopefully this will be an easier one for you to fit. But I will go over a few things, and I'll talk about that more at the cutting table when we get to that point. Okay, so let's start by kind of going over our fabric, our notions that we're gonna need. I'm gonna tell you about the equipment that I'm gonna be using. Gidget is in here. She's still getting used to the filming studio as well, although my chair, I can't tell if it's in, I'm looking at you in a teeny tiny little screen. I think my chair is just basically in the picture here, so this is where she sleeps now when I'm in here working. It's all about finding her new spot, so apologies if you can see her or hear her. She's in here with me. Okay, let's talk about equipment really quickly. So I know that not everyone out there has a serger, so while I will be making my Parker Ponte Pants on the serger, there is some stuff that I will also be doing on my sewing machine. I'll be using this Bernina 770 that was gifted or loaned to me by the University of Sewing here in Bloomington, Indiana, or south of me in Bloomington, Indiana. They have loaned me this machine for a year to play around with, and I think working on a home machine is going to be so much more helpful for a lot of you as I go through sewing tutorials and sew along such as this. The serger, I just didn't have room to put them both up here and show you fabric. It's also a Bernina. This is a new to me. I just purchased it. It is the Bernina 850 serger. It's just a serger, not a combo machine, not computerized. It's one of their just mechanical ones. But that is the serger that I will be using as well. And as always, that's linked down below. The serger is mine. The machine is a loaner. And I'm having so much fun on this, and I can't wait to show you guys more. All right, on that vein, I will be using in the sewing machine, and I'll talk you through, if you don't have a serger, how you can get the same type of finishes on the machine, because I actually just had to do that on this machine because my serger, my original serger broke. It is fixed now, so, but anyway, it was a stressful moment. So I've actually sewn knit garments on this as well. I also have been without a serger recently. But on this machine, I will be using the walking foot, which I think is foot 56, if I'm not mistaken, for the Bernina, but it's just a standard walking foot. So I will be using this on my machine. No matter what home machine you're using, I highly recommend getting a walking foot. Some machines come with a walking foot. Sometimes you have to buy it as an extra foot attachment. Whatever the walking foot is for your machine, I highly recommend it for knits. It makes sewing knits so much easier, and you will never regret a walking foot. It takes care of all the issues of sewing with knits. So that is the foot that I will have on my machine. I'm going to be using the Schmetz Stretch size 11, or the metric is 75/11 for imperial, stretch needle. So stretch needles are a little different than a ballpoint needle. While they are a ballpoint needle, they are meant for more Lycra content, not just like 100% cotton jersey. I actually very rarely use a ballpoint needle. I'm pretty much in this machine using either a Schmetz stretch needle or a Schmetz Microtex for my wovens. So I would definitely recommend just using the stretch. It just helps with skip stitches. It helps with all sorts of things. It just goes through the fabric a little easier when you've got high lycra content, which most of our knits now do have. So yes, I'll be using the Schmetz stretch size 11, although a 10 or a 12, depending on, you know, probably more a 12 for the bottom weight that we're going to be using. Okay, now let's talk about fabric. So this pattern calls for, you can use stretch wovens, you can use or heavy knits like a Ponte or even like a Bengaline. Bengaline, I think it's a viscose poly, but it's very stretchy. A lot of ready-to-wear pants are made out of Bengaline. So it's a fabric that you can find out there. I have only ever made this pattern in Ponte. So I'll tell you the stretch percentage over at the cutting table. I was gonna check that before I started filming and I forgot. I'm gonna say a good 20 to 30% stretch. Crosswise stretch is gonna be good. But I will tell you exactly what this fabric has when we get over to the filming table over here. So I've used a few different, I've made this pattern 3 other times. This will be the 4th pair I've made. I've made one for myself, one for my sister, and one for my mother. My first pair, I used the Refined Ponte from Joann's, and that worked lovely. It's a very heavyweight Ponte. For my mother and sister, I used a Ponte that I really love from Minerva. That also made wonderful Parker pants as well. But today, I'm going to be using a Ponte from Serge Fabrics. I will leave, you can't really find the Refined Ponte anymore from Joann's, sometimes in a couple of colors, but it's hit or miss. But I will link down below the Ponte that I've used for my mom and sister that's from Minerva, and I will leave the Serge Fabrics Ponte. I have recently done a little bit of sewing with their viscose nylon spandex blend. Love it. This is also a viscose nylon spandex blend, but it has a twill weave, which was something I was so excited to buy this fabric because I was curious. So yeah, if you look at it, it has a twill weave. It looks like it would be a denim or a cotton twill, but it's not. It's a Ponte. It's a really cool fabric. It would make a good jacket as well, but I'm going to be using it for these pants. Obviously mine is in this beautiful olive color, but I will leave this link down below, as well as the solid fabrics that Serge also carries. I'll just leave a link down to all their Pontes because it's wonderful. If you're buying Ponte from another place, my biggest recommendation is just to use a Ponte that has little to no polyester in it. I used to say only viscose nylon spandex, and that still is my favorite blend for Ponte, but I have used recently some that has a little bit, just a lower polyester count, so maybe, I don't know, like 70% viscose and then like 27 poly and 3 spandex. I mean, I'm just kind of spitballing there, but as long as the viscose is the bigger, the polyester does kind of give it a little bit more beef and makes it not quite as drapey, which can be really good with bottom weight. So I'm not as opposed to polyester as I used to be. Now the high polyester viscose or Pontes, those have a tendency to pill, and those are not my favorite, and they feel yucky on my skin. But if you have a little bit of polyester in there, I have found, or polyamide, sometimes it's called a few different things, but I have found that either a rayon nylon spandex or a viscose nylon spandex or rayon or viscose with a little bit of polyester spandex are great Pontes, and all of those will work. And I mean, Pontes, they do come a little bit thicker, a little bit thinner. I can vouch for the ones that I've left down below that I've, currently using or that I have made pants out of. But one of the things that is going to be a key to this, and this is not included in the pattern, I am going to be putting a power mesh panel in the front of the pants. This is just kind of it's not I wouldn't call it a control panel, kind of. Not really though, a control top panel. It really is just another layer to help the fabric glide over your lower abdomen so that nothing is cupping. I get the cupping. I have far from a flat stomach. I had twins. I had a C-section. There's a scar. There's overlap. There's a lot going on that I don't necessarily want my knit pants that are very comfy to wear to be cupping underneath that area that hangs down. It's I'm making it sound so attractive, but you know, it's just part of our bodies. It's, you know, a lot of us have that. So what this is going to do is just kind of help that knit fabric glide over that area instead of clinging to the lumps and bumps. So that is what I'm going to show you how I put, and I put a power mesh panel in the front of a lot of my knit pants. Not so much my knit joggers, and I really don't wear leggings, but any other kind of knit pant that I want it to be a little bit nicer, I will, or knit skirts that are fitted, I put just a panel just in the front. So I'll be showing you how to do that probably next week, because I make the front of the pants first, or the front of the skirt, and then I cut this out. So I'll be showing you that next week. You'll also need some thread. I'm going to be using Gutermann Mara 100. The Gutermann Mara 100 is a Tex, what is it? God, I can't remember now what the Tex number is on Gutermann Mara 100. It's not 100. Can't remember. Sorry. It's their all-purpose thread. It's their all-purpose thread. It is my absolute favorite. I use it for 95% of my sewing. Comes in a million colors. I get mine from Wawak, but you know, you can get it a lot of places. But obviously use your favorite thread of choice. But yes, I'll be using the Gutermann Mara in my bobbin and in my top in this color that matches my fabric. Okay, and then the final thing that we're going to need for this pant pattern is elastic. My favorite elastic is the knitted elastic. I get mine from Wawak. You can get it a lot of different places. The knitted elastic, in my opinion, is the best because it is really flat. It lays nice and flat and flush to the bodies. It's not too bulky. And because of the way it's knitted, it has like these little ribs on here. So if you need to trim it down into a little bit narrower width, you can just go along one of those ribs and it doesn't unravel. Just the way that it's constructed. So knitted elastic is by far my favorite kind of elastic. I will leave the link at Wawak down below. Obviously, if you're not in the US or Canada, Wawak I think also has a Canadian site, but you can at least look at it to see, you know, to try and source it in your area as well. But knitted elastic, it's pretty common in any places. So yes, knitted elastic. The pattern calls for 1 1/4 inch wide. My knitted elastic is actually 1 1/2 inches wide, so I will be cutting 1/4 inch off, which is usually like, I don't know, 2 ribs in. So just a little bit that I have to cut off. Okay, and that is everything. So now we're going to talk about sizing a little bit. So let me pop over to the computer and we're going to look at the size chart and I'm going to talk you through how to pick your size. Okay, so here we are at the Style Arc web page and I am looking at the Parker Ponte Pant. We're just going to come right down here where it says size chart. The size chart is the same, I believe, for all the patterns. So we're just going to, it's easier to see the size chart here on the website than on the actual pattern. I'm going to scroll down here to inches and we're going to be looking, we really are only focused on this hip measurement here. So my hips like to be between 39 and 40 inches. Sometimes if I'm really thin, 38, but they are hovering around 39 right now, 39-ish. So I see here that I'm kind of in between a 10 and a 12. Style Arc patterns, in my experience, tend to be just have a little bit more ease on the actual pattern, and I will show that to you on the printout. It suggests 1.5 inches of negative ease on the pattern, and the finished hip measurement is 37 inches, which would be for a 38.5 inch hip. However, because they're knit pants and they're nice and stretchy, I did decide to size down to a 10. And again, this is because I've also made quite a few of their patterns before. And for the most part, I tend to go with a size 10 for most of the patterns. Now, if this were a woven pattern, I would size up and do a size 12. But because I'm dealing with a knit with quite a bit of stretch, my fabric has about close to 50%. It's between 40 and 50% of stretch, just depending. I can stretch it to 50%, but I don't know if I'm stretching it completely, like super hard. So anyway, because of that, I am going to go ahead and make the size 10. I also know that my current pair are a size 10 and those fit me really well. So I do have the advantage of that, but that is kind of how I'm picking. Now, that being said, the waist, if we look here, 10 is for a waist of 29 and a half, and the 12 is for a waist of 31 and a half. I also know my waist tends to be in the 14 to 16 range. So my waist usually can go anywhere from 32 to 36 inches, depending on inflammation and all that kind of stuff. Again, these are I'm not going to do any grading on this pant pattern because it's an elastic waist pattern. So instead of doing any grading, I'm actually just going to cut the size 10, and I'm going to put longer elastic into the waistband. So it just has, it doesn't fit quite so tight across my waist. So that is what I'm deciding to do there. So my recommendation is always to pick your pant pattern based on your hip measurement, and then either grading up or down for waist, or there's a few other ways that you can give your waist the room that it needs, whether that be a full belly adjustment, adjusting darts, adjusting pleats. Sometimes it is grading between sizes, but I'm just going to adjust my elastic that I put into the waistband for this one. So hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions, leave them down below. All right, let's get going on this. Okay, so this is a pretty simple pattern, and then it doesn't have a lot of pattern pieces. I had mine printed out. A lot of Style Arc patterns now come multi-sized. This one does not. You have to buy your single size, but know that they also send you the size above and the size below. So I almost always buy size 10 because that's right where I fit in most of the time. And if I'm sizing down, I'll do a 10. If I'm usually right in between a 10 and a 12. So I almost always buy a size 10. So then I have the 12, and my sister's usually an 8. So that's why I normally do the 10 instead of buying the 12 to have the 14 and the 10. Hopefully that makes sense. But let's talk about a few different pattern alterations. So first, let's go through our pattern pieces real quick. So you're going to have one back, one waistband piece, one front, and then you have this little side front because we have a faux pocket, and then the back pockets. So pretty easy. Obviously, we're not going to be doing anything with, well, I'll keep this pocket piece out because we can talk about that a little bit. Okay, so I'm making the size 10. I was in between sizes. I decided to size down to the size 10 so that, because it's a knit pair of pants, and I do have quite a bit of stretch in my fabric, and we'll talk about more about the stretch in my fabric here in a second before we cut things out. But that's why, according to the pattern pieces here, you want, and it says right here, you get very little instructions. We will go through them though. But right here it says that you want 4 centimeters or 1.6 inches of negative ease at your hip. So for a size 10, again, on the website, they do show you the finished measurements for all the sizes. But for the size 10, it's 37 inches. So that's saying a hip of 38 and a half would be kind of what you want. My hip can be a 38 if I'm thin, but normally I'm running in between a 39 and a 40. But I'm going with the 10 on this one, mostly because I've also made this pattern before, and I know that my size 10s fit me. So, so there we go. But I often size down to the 10 in Style Arc because they have just a little bit more ease, usually. And I find that a 10 usually works. Again, it depends on the pattern. This is very stretchy. If I were making a woven pair of pants, I would probably do the size 12. So that's a little bit my thought process. And I do hope here very, very soon, I've got a whole bunch of stuff coming your way helping with fit, because I know that is a big issue, and picking a pattern size is a big part of that. All right. When picking your size, though, hip measurements. Let's talk about hip measurements really quickly. You want to take your hip is the fullest part of your hip. However, when patterns are drafting, typically that means 7 to 9 inches below your natural waist is going to be your full hip. If you are petite, it's going to be 7 inches below your natural waist. If you are regular, it's going to be 8 inches. If you are tall, it's probably going to be about 9 inches. So just kind of keep that in mind with most of pattern drafting blocks. That's kind of how that goes. So measure your body, keeping in mind that if you are petite or if you are tall, you'll be adding or subtracting probably about an inch, which is standard, and I'm speaking specific, just standard numbers that obviously can be different for everyone, but pick your number. Natural waist is right where you bend. Measure, if you're petite, 7 inches down from that. For your standard body, 8 inches down from that to kind of get your full hip. That's the measurement we're going off of, okay? So I'm making the straight size 10. I will be cutting my elastic, though, to fit the size 12. So I am not grading between sizes at all, even though my waist puts me in a larger size than my hips, which is very typical for me. Okay, hopefully that wasn't too confusing. With our front pattern, one thing that I'm going to have to do, even though I'm only 5'2", I actually have pretty, I'm just a little, my legs are just a little bit shorter than like your standard sizes. I'm a little too long for petites pants. My legs are. So I'm just going to be removing 1 inch from the leg. So that is definitely, let me move this one out of the way. Let's not get confused here. So here's your lengthen and shorten line here. I'm just going to be, well, maybe making an inch or a line an inch below. Okay, if you have shorter legs or longer legs and you want to add or remove more than 1 inch of your pattern, I'm going to suggest that you add or remove in a couple of different places. You can definitely take one here at the lengthen and shorten line, which is the knee notch. I would also suggest taking length or adding or subtracting length up here about mid-thigh. So, midpoint-ish between your lengthen and shorten line and the crotch. So somewhere in here, it can be, it's an arbitrary spot. So just pick a spot in here. And I would divide up the length you need to add or subtract. So for instance, if you need to take out 1.5 inches, maybe do 3/4 here and 3/4 here. If you need to, same if you needed to add 1.5 inches. 2 inches, I would do 1 inch here, and so on and so forth. That way you are shrinking or extending the pattern proportionately to the leg. So that is one little tip I've got. Okay, rise. This should hit right at your natural, the top of the waistband should hit right at your natural waist. That's hard to measure, guys. Because pants, you're going around a lot of curve. That can mean a lot of different things. Fullness in the stomach, fullness in the butt. It can be full in different parts of the stomach and the butt. It's a really hard number to measure and to get right. So I'm just going to say for this first pair of pants, if you typically can go to a store and buy pants and the rise fits you fine, just leave it alone for this pair, okay? If you go to the store and you notice that, your back creeps way down on you, things ride lower on you than they're supposed to, or vice versa. If you put on a pair of pants and the high-waisted pants are, up to your armpits, then yes, you may want to go ahead and add or subtract a little bit to the rise before you make your first pair. But do it little increments. And I would suggest taking equal parts from the front and from the back. Okay. Now, if you're someone that the front of the pants work fine, but you need a lot of room in the back, I'm going to show you how to adjust that here in just a second. If you're someone that gets a lot of, for lack of a better term, and I apologize, but if you get the camel toe, if it cuts in, if the center front seam cuts in too tight to the body, you just need to scoop a little bit out of the crotch seam here. So this is the front crotch curve. This dotted line is the sewing line. Obviously, the other one is the cut line. What I would do is just ignore the sewing line. There's 3/8 of an inch seam allowance here. Just go little by little. I would just try scooping out, 3/4, not 3/4, 1/4 of an inch, okay? And go from known, scoop it just 1/4 of an inch, and back to the front, okay? That's going to eliminate that issue. Now, I know that you're thinking, but it's obviously too tight there. Why am I taking away the pattern? Negative filling space here in a crotch curve, it can be very hard to understand. It's the opposite. You don't need to add this anywhere else. You actually are adding room for your body to fit into this area, okay? So I know that that can be, it seems counterintuitive, but trust me. If you have a wedgie in the back or a wedgie in the front, you just want to scoop out that crotch curve just a little bit. I don't need it on the front, but I do need it on the back, so I'll show you. We will be doing that on the back. That's also a way that you can add just, sorry, I didn't mean to hit the camera. That's also a way that you can add just a little bit to the back too, to help take that, your center back seam up a little bit too. It will help raise that a little bit. We'll talk a little bit more about some different things that you can do without going into too much detail, but and again, I am coming up with resources to go into a lot of the detail, so stay tuned on that. Also, if you get the diagonal lines that go from your inner thigh up, like right in your leg bend there, where you get those pull lines, that means you just need to add a little bit to your inner thigh. Again, just a little increment of a quarter of an inch to 3/8 of an inch makes a world of difference. So that is just extending this line out a quarter to 3/8 of an inch and then blending it to nothing here at the front. It's a very easy adjustment, and that will save that area from all of those lines that you get. Alternatively, if you get a lot of excess fabrics where it's, you know, baggy, it could be you just need to shorten that rise a little bit and take that out of both the front and the back. And if you do that, don't forget to add in your little piece here. This does make it nice because you can line up your sewing lines together. So add in your little side piece here, but take the same amount out of the front, add it out of the back, and take them out equally, okay? But yeah, you may just need to add a little bit here. Conversely, I'm sorry, I keep hitting that. I would be surprised if you have to take away, this is a pretty short crotch curve because it is a knit pant, but if you do have excess fabric that you're finding there in between your legs, you can also shave off a little bit and then take it to nothing as well. So that's just kind of some generalizations here to the front and the back. Okay, just don't forget to put that little pocket piece, just kind of tape it on lightly. Also with the back, for my pant pattern here, I'm going to shorten the leg by 1 inch, just here at the lengthen and shorten line. Again, if you need to add or subtract more than 1 inch, I would do it in a couple of different places. Don't let pants scare you guys, though. I know a lot of people get paralyzed, and then you start fixing too many things, and then you make issues where there wouldn't have been issues before. Most of us, not all, but most of us, a large percentage of us, can go to a store, buy a pair of pants, and have them fit well enough. So keep that in mind. You know, you don't need to do usually a ton to pants to get them to work. There's obviously outliers, but for the most part, try not to overdo it. All right, so here in the back, this is where I get wedgies in the back because of the fullness of my butt, the way that is. And I found that 3/8 of an inch is perfect, which is actually right at this sewing line here. So I'm just gonna come down and I freeball, or, oh my gosh. I free style it here. So I'm just taking a little bit out here. And again, I know that that feels like you need to add it elsewhere. I promise you don't. So this pink line, I'm going to cut that out because that gives my more space in that seam there for my butt to fit, which also helps raise that back a little bit. But if you have a huge gap in the back of center back where your pants really dip down, you may need a full butt adjustment. I'm not going to go into that today. Again, stay tuned. We will be talking. I've got resources coming to you guys, okay? I hate to be cryptic, but trust me. I'm trying. My duty, or not my duty, but my calling, I feel like, is to help serve the sewing community and helping you guys make things as simple as possible so that they are doable, and there should be no gatekeepers to sewing. It's all doable. It is really not as hard as I think a lot of times things get made out to be. So I'm really trying to simplify things for you guys, and I do have a resource coming. Okay, that being said, but it could also be that you just need to raise your rise. Alternatively, if you're needing some extra in center back instead of messing, you know, if you just need it kind of center back, just add a little. You know, if you're finding that your center back dips an inch, just add an inch here and take it down to nothing. It's a knit pair of pants. It'll work. Your waistband will still fit in fine. So try not to overthink things too much. So hopefully that kind of, this is the only alteration I'm making, is just scooping out the 3/8 of an inch and then shortening each leg by a full inch. And then I'll be putting the size 12 elastic in instead of the 10. Okay, hopefully that helps a little bit. If not, leave questions down below and I'll answer those as soon as possible. Let's get our fabric cut out, and I will show you the pieces that you will need to have cut out for next week. All right, so for the end of today, you need one waistband piece. I cut mine out on the fold just to make it easier, but it is just one piece. Make sure you mark your notches. I've got my front, I've got my pocket, I have my little side front, and I have my back, all cut out of my fabric. This fabric, keep forgetting to check, has I'd say about a 40% stretch percentage, 40 to 50. So that is what my fabric has, but I think you could get away with something as little as 30. Probably 25 to 30 would probably be fine. So this is probably a little stretchier than the refined Ponte that I made my first pair out of. So, okay, guys, that is all I've got. I will go back to the sewing machine and talk about next time. Okay, everyone. So this is the end of of this week. I will be back next week, and we will put our fronts together, and I will show you how to put in the power mesh into the front, how to cut that out. And then the following week, we will put our backs together and then put the whole pair of pants together and finish them up. So this will be a 3-week sew along. All right, guys, I hope, as always, that you will leave any questions you have down below. I'll answer those as soon as possible. Hopefully the fitting stuff I walked you through isn't too confusing. But as always, I really am working on what I think is going to be a good reference. So stay tuned. But until then, leave me any questions you have down below and I'll be happy to answer those. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Sunday, and I'll see you again on Tuesday. Bye.